All right, so we have a database class here, which is awesome, and we want to be able to read from the database. Now, let me go to login here because we have an error, unidentified function query. So we're on line 89 in functions.php. So where is this? 89 is here. So we are using the where clause. So we don't have this db query anymore, this query function. So in order to use it, simply we just have to say db. Now this is just a variable, so you can name it anything you want. It's just easier for me to name db. It's nice and short. Is equal to new database, like this. Now I forgot to mention one thing. There's a difference. You can do it like this, or you can leave out those. Now the reason to use those is if you remember that function that was created in the beginning called construct. So this is what is known as a magic function. It's a special function, this one. So if it's here and it has a variable to pass here. So for example, if I accept some variables, then it means when I initiate database, I must provide a variable here. So this is when these brackets are necessary. So I can pass in some data into the class during its construction. So this function automatically runs whenever I say new database, it will run. But we don't need it for this particular case, so out of here. So back here, new database, and all I have to do now is just say db and put that and say query, and we are good. So every situation where I'm using this db query, I have to do this where I'm using the query. So let me try and find all instances of this, which is right here. Okay, let's find another instance. No? Okay. Anyway, it will alert us when there's a problem. Seems like fun. So if I now refresh and resend, things are working fine. We are back to normal. The advantage is that now we have a very specific class that deals only with connecting to the DB. Now let's do the same for these other functions. Okay, so for example, here we have a where function that deals with a specific table. It would be nice to just have the where clause, the where function, and not have to specify a table. So let me identify so what we will do here is create a few classes. Okay, actually what we'll do is create one large class and then we can extend from it. So I'll show you how inheritance works. So what we'll do is inside models here, in fact inside core, let's create a new thingy. Let's save this one as model.php. So model.php is, oh, like I said, anything you add in core must also be added to the init. So let's add, so model will extend database, but so it means it should come after database. Okay, so here we want to create a class, model class. Now this one does extend something, so I'm just going to say model, which extends database. We don't need a constructor here either, You can use it if you want. Hey, what's going on? This is insane. My keyboard is protesting, isn't cooperating very well. Okay, so what does extends mean? What extends means is that, you see, I've created a class here called model, right? If I extend the database, it means every functionality that is inside the database is automatically available for model as well. So in this case, what I'm saying is I can do something like m is equal to new model, like this, and then immediately you see model has no functions in here. But however, if I do something like m query like this, it will work. And that's because even though there's no query function in here, it's inside the DB class which we are extending. So by extension, we are able to use all the items that DB has. So this is what extends does. This way it prevents you from retyping the same functions that are already in the database class, because otherwise, if I want model to have a connection to the database, I would have needed to do this whole connect thing again inside here. But we can avoid that by simply extending another class that already does that. So many classes can extend this same database and immediately get the connection to the database as part of the system. So this is what extends does. Now, if you remember down here, I had written something like you have public, you have private, and then you have protected. So in this case, if I have private, so this one is public here, so which means by doing this, it's going to work. But let me do just select all, from users, just so this can run. So in this case, I'm going to show you that I won't get any errors by refreshing my page at all. Okay, so I get no errors because this is okay. But if I try to access DB Connect, then we're going to have problems. DB Connect doesn't take any params, so my mouse and my keyboard are not cooperating very much. It's getting annoying now. Okay, so if I do the DB Connect like this, it's going to give me a fatal error and say call to private method, right? So even though we've inherited things from the database class, this one that is private is not inherited. So keep that in mind. Now, there are times when I want this thing to be private, this function to be private, so that no function or code can access it from outside. But at the same time, I want to be able to inherit it. Okay, so because if I use private, the inheritance doesn't work, and at the same time, outside forces cannot access this, which is good. But sometimes I want the extension, which is this one, to be able to still have access. So in that case, what I do is call it protected. So say protected. So protected is just like private, exactly the same. Only difference is that it makes it inheritable. So at this point, if I say protected, I can refresh. Wait, call to protected method DB Connect from global scope. Where did I call this from a global scope? Oh yes, indeed. So this is the global scope, sorry. I'm supposed to only be able to call it from within itself, like here. So in here, let me put a constructor, or let me put another function here. I'll just say function, function hey, like so, just a simple function. So this function internally calls DB Connect, and it calls it from within itself, which is this, like so. So this DB Connect. Now, if I run hey down here and just say m hey, you won't expect any errors here. Let's refresh. There's no errors. because I'm calling it from within itself, even though it's just an extension. But if I return this to private, then we will have a problem. It will say go to private method. So I hope you understand what's going on here. If I want a function inheritable, I'll use protected. If I don't want it inheritable, I'll use private to secure it. So that's just the difference. So let me remove all this mumbo jumbo and all that. We'll leave this thing as private because we don't want it accessible anywhere. Only the database class needs to be able to access it. So what model will do is it's going to collect all the basic functionality that is required in order to access any table. So this is universal functionality for all tables. So for example, this same insert where is all universal, except it has a specific table here, but we can change that. So if I cut this function and that one, and we'll leave validate because validate is very specific to specific tables. So cut that. And what else? Allowed columns is also very specific because each table has very specific allowed columns. So only those two functions can come to model.php. So to the model class, sorry. So there we go. We have the model. And of course, these insert are public because we want to be able to access them from the outside. So public, and then insert. Now you see a growing trend here. We have table there. This is a waste of space. So what we can do instead is we're only using table in here, but we may want to be able to set it from the outside. So I will say, actually, let's call it protected because we want it to be used only from the inside and not the outside, but inheritable. So I'll say protected table and then is equal to, let's put a default value users. Now keep in mind, model is the base model. It's the base class for connecting to any table. So we shouldn't have a very specific table name in here at all. But we do here. So this won't work very well. So what we need to do is get another model. Each specific model should have this table thing there, and then we can read from it. So here, instead of, you see table here, which we are looking for, we are using there and there. So what I would do here is just say this table, okay, and then I can remove it from here. So when I say this table, I'm accessing that, okay, because it's from this class. And do the same thing here, this table. So which means now no need to supply it there because we're getting it from there. So since we do this with it's accessible to every function, we can do the same thing here as well. Data, go. Okay, that's about it. So this is the default value we expect, but we can always replace this. Okay, we can always change this before running any of these functions, and they need to be found changed. So now we need a way to tell it which table to look for. Now this is the base class, so I don't want to be using this one directly. I just want to be able to use the insert and where function here and have it guess the table itself. So in this case, it will always save to the users table. But what if we have a products table or something else? So what we will do is we have this model which we have loaded, but then we'll go in models and create a very specific model for a very specific table. So this all looks like we are taking the long way around, but it really helps to solve problems in future that you may get from your website. So trust me when I say this is the method to use, and not just adding functions, all of the functions in one file like this. So it may look like the long way around, but it makes things easier in future to correct things. Because right now, if there's a connection problem, I know exactly which file to go to and check things. If there's a problem with connecting to the database, to a particular table, I know to go to model. But instead, we'll add even more specific models. So I'm inside the models folder, PHP, like this. I'm going to add another class. What's wrong here? Let me save it. So this one, I want it to be able to connect to the users table. So I'll call it users, or user singular.php. Doesn't really matter. The only important part is that the class name, this class name right there, should match your file name. This is very important. That way we can automatically load them. You see, the problem with functions here is this page can reach even 10,000 lines of code, which means every time you run your website, all that code is loaded and processed, which may make your website quite slow to load. But when we are using models like this, we can load them only when we need them. So we are separating the code. So I will say user like this. So same with the file name. The capitalization doesn't really matter. This can be all lowercase and this can be uppercase, but whatever method you choose, just be consistent. As long as the text itself is the same, it's okay. It'll find it. So user. Now we want to extend another class. Yes, exactly. We want to extend the model class, because this is a smaller model and it gets its power from the big model here, which is the mother of all models. So by definition, it means I have access to the functions that this model has, and also the database class, because this other model also extends the database class, which means even inside the user, I can access this function from the database class, because one is extending the other and the other is extending the other. So all functionality carries through. So in this case, I want to remove this protected table from here into here. Okay. Now, this user thing extends this. But if I try to use the functions in here, this table will not give an error even though it doesn't exist here, because it will exist in this one where I'm getting things from, the final one. As long as this exists in any of these, either in database, in model, or in user, it doesn't matter where it exists. As long as it does, I can then use it in any of these functions because they're extending each other. Now the beauty of adding it to this particular one is because this user connects to a very specific table. At the same time, if I create a new file and save this, called product.php, this will be the product class, right? So this one will be class product like this, and it will extend model as well. And because it does that, here I will put a very specific table name. Okay, and this one will be products. So as you can see, even though these are separate because they're extending the model, depending on which of these I'm running, if I'm running this class, it automatically knows to look for things in the products table because I have it there. If I'm using this, it will automatically know to get to the users table, because every time we run this, their version of this table will depend on which of these you instantiated. I hope it's making sense. If it's not, just continue with it. You will see that it actually works like a charm. So I'll remove this. The only thing I'll leave is table name here, because even though there's nothing in here, this products class already has the functionality of model and database. So I can still do things with it. So let me remove this as well. this is all I needed for now here. So hopefully this is making some sense.